Yo, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto had the sealing knowledge of his father, along with a bloodline that will allow him to become the Titan of Defense, Naruto x Harem, Part 2. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Twin Silver Dragon. Link is in the description. And also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. Naruto put his hand on Shino's shoulder, and they disappeared in a shunshin. They reappeared inside of a spare room in Naruto's lab. Shino took a moment, and looked around. It was a simple room, no bigger than your average bedroom, with a table, 2 chairs, and 2 cups of tea waiting on the table. Shino's eyebrow rose in curiosity, and Naruto answered his unasked question. I sent a clone to create the tea. Hope you don't mind, but I thought we could be comfortable whilst we talked, Naruto said, as he motioned Shino to a seat. Shino nodded, and sat down, followed by Naruto. Before we get down to the serious stuff, how's your hive doing? Naruto asked. Shino was slightly surprised, but answered anyway. They grow steadily every day. I have 3 hives currently. 2 of the regular Kikaichu, and 1 of the special bugs that were created when it met you. Naruto smirked, and Shino took that as a signal. Naruto-san, why is it that the companion that I sent with you for a week is now able to feed on Yuki, and consumes only a quarter of what my other companions eat? He asked curiously. Naruto chuckled. That leads into why you are here. But first I must ask you, what do you think of me? Naruto asked seriously. Shino sat quiet for a moment before responding. I believe you have hidden much of your skills, especially after today's performance, and you are, more than likely, the strongest genin at this time. Your previous behavior was, apparently, a mask set to hide yourself from something. Perhaps the treatment you received by the villagers? Shino said. He noticed no reaction aside from the slight narrowing of Naruto's eyes, but silently confirmed his observation. Overall, I find you to be a kind person with a penchant for pranks that could be a valuable ally and friend. Shino responded honestly. Naruto eyed Shino quietly. 5 minutes ticked by before Naruto replied to Shino's observation. I appreciate your honesty, and I would be honored to be your friend. Your observations are spot on. And I must say that I am relieved to see that not everyone my age is blinded by their parents, or their own preconceptions. One more question before I explain why I brought you here, if you would be so kind? Naruto asked. He received a nod from Shino before continuing. What do you think of the teams? He asked. Shino thought for a moment before answering. Team 7 would be an ideal assault and tracking team. Team 8 would be a good ambush and capture or infiltration team. Our team is illogical. Ino-san is mismatched with our team. You, Naruto-san, and I would be good at tracking and assault as well. Given your capabilities, this team could possibly be an infiltration and retrieval team, but Ino-san would need heavy training, and I would have to be trained specially as well, so it is illogical to assume that combination at this time. Ino-san has only her clan jutsu, and her abilities do not suit our styles. Until we determine our affinities, I cannot logically comment on Yamato-sensei, as I have not seen his abilities or his skills, Shino replied. Naruto nodded. I thought the same thing. Unfortunately, I know why this team was formed and, given your answers, I feel it prudent to answer your earlier question, Naruto said. At this, Shino seemed to lean a bit closer. The Kyuubi no Kitsune is a Biju, and no human, no matter how powerful, can kill a Biju. However, a strong human can seal the Biju into a container. Naruto noticed Shino's eyebrows nearly disappear into his hair, but continued on. The Yondaime Hokage did not kill the Kyuubi, as was told the younger generation. Instead he sealed it inside a newborn child, because no Biju higher than Sanbai can be sealed into an inanimate object. He sealed it into me, Shino-san, Naruto said, as he stared directly into Shino's eyes, air goggles. Shino was silent for a moment. Why would we be told he killed it then? He asked. Naruto sighed. You have noticed my treatment amongst the villagers. Imagine if the younger generation believed the same as the older. That I was the fox reincarnated? I would be dead, not that they haven't tried it already. Naruto answered. This answers your earlier question. Your Kikaichu can feed on Yuki because my chakra contains a low amount of Yuki. I steadily fed it enough, in a small amount, that it mutated, and can consume Yuki. I hope you find it useful. Naruto answered. Shino furrowed his eyebrows. Why would you give me a weapon against yourself? Why would you give a potential enemy a weapon to kill you? Shino asked, as he remembered the trust issues Naruto had. Naruto was silent for a moment before responding. I believe you're the best person to stop me should the need arise. You hold no prejudice for me being the container, as you yourself hold Kikeichu. You are taught to think logically before acting. You would also factor in that I allowed you to have these companions, and act accordingly. Simply put, Shino-san, I have watched many of our classmates, and other ninja that protected me when I was younger, and believe that you are the best suited to control me, should the need arise. Naruto replied. Shino silently went over Naruto's reasons before bowing his head. I am deeply honored to know that you would trust me so easily, Naruto-san, he said. Naruto sighed. I don't trust you completely, Shino-san, but I do believe in your decisions regarding my tenant, Naruto answered, getting a nod of agreement from Shino. Now, this team has a Mokuton user, which the first is rumored to have been able to control a Biju with his abilities. A Yamanaka who could tell if I was thinking of leaving or being disloyal to the village, even if it was subconsciously. And you, who can eat my chakra and my. This team was made solely to control me, and I find it extremely hard to work with them, let alone trust them, when their job is to keep me in line, Naruto said, answering the question of why he didn't trust his team. Shino nodded. It is logical, considering your situation. However, I understand what you mean. I appreciate you telling me all of this, Naruto-san, Shino said, as he noticed the time. Naruto nodded. It is fine, please don't tell anyone that I know. I have one last thing I need to take care of before all of this comes out, Naruto said, as he thought of the seal that was still being displayed on his back via his stasis seals. Shino nodded and replied, I shall honor your wish, Naruto-san. I hope you can come to trust me more. He bowed, as Naruto put his hand on his shoulder. Naruto smiled softly. We shall see, Shino-san, he replied, as he shunshined the two back to the training field before they parted ways. Naruto to his shithole apartment, and Shino to his complex. Naruto walked silently back to his apartment, as he thought back on his meeting with Shino. Suddenly, he remembered making the tea, and setting the table for the meeting. Wait a second, I didn't do that. That was my clone, so I get the memories of my clones. Why didn't I notice this before? He thought. He shrugged a minute later, and chuckled. Oh well, I'll just have to use this later. He walked up to his door, and channeled chakra into the seal he had woven into the doorknob. It unlocked with a soft click, and he stepped inside. He made his way to his room, as he heard the door lock behind him, and the seal glowed around the room before fading. He stepped inside, and smirked seeing a sleeping Anko in his bed. She's so clingy, he thought before quickly slipping to his underwear, hopping into bed, and snuggling with his girl. But whoever said I didn't like it? Naruto thought, as Anko's arms wrapped around him, and pulled him flush against her body. He chuckled softly before falling asleep. Same night, Aburame compound. Shino walked into the compound at 8 p.m. He hadn't had dinner, and walked straight to the kitchen so he could find something to eat. He walked in, and was surprised to find his father sitting at the table with a cup of tea. Shibi was a good 5 feet 10 inches with a long black trench coat covering his body, and the trademark goggles all Aburame wore. He looked up to see Shino walked in, and allowed his son to make his dinner, and sit before beginning his conversation. You are late, Sochi. That is unlike you. May I inquire as to your whereabouts? Shibi asked. I was with one of my teammates, Tsunade. Shino replied before he bit into the sandwich he had made. Shibi sat silently before replied, I see. Would it, perhaps, be Uzumaki-san that you were with? Shino nodded. Yes, Tsunade. He answered my question, as to my new hive. It was most informative, he said. Shibi's eyebrows rose. What did he tell you? He asked curiously. Shino put down his sandwich, and looked at his father. I am afraid that I have promised Naruto-san not to reveal his secrets until he chooses to do so himself. Suffice it to say that he chose to give me my hive, and that it was not an accident. Please refrain from informing anyone of your suspicions, for I believe that Naruto-san has earned his privacy. Shino replied seriously. Shibi stared at his son for a moment before nodding. I will do as you ask, Sochi. However, if things get out of hand, I will have to inform the Hokage, he said. Shino nodded in agreement. I understand Tsunade. I will simply have to ensure that things do not get out of hand, Shino said. Shibi smiled behind his trench coat, and stood. I will leave that task to you then, Sochi. Good night, he said before leaving the room. Shino bowed his head in respect, and replied, Thank you, Tsunade. Good night. Time skip. 1 week, Naruto's lab. The last week has gone rather well. Yamato had taught them tree walking, and they had all got it down in 3 days. Naruto already had it mastered, but made it look like he was working on it. He didn't want anyone to know his true strength until he removed that bloody seal from his back. Ino was, surprisingly, only a fangirl because she thought it would help Sakura to have a rival. That plan backfired, and Ino was now working hard to gain some real kunoichi skills. She didn't seem to pay much attention to Naruto, but had commented that her dad often asked about her team. Yamato was pleasantly civil to Naruto, much to his surprise. He taught all of them equally, and actually seemed to enjoy it. He had shown a few of his Mokutan jutsus, like his Moku Bunshin, and his Mokutan, Mokujihiki, wood release, wood locking wall, which had seemed pretty useful in a fight. He did seem to watch Naruto the most, but he knew that old man Hokage had ordered it, along with severe political threats, so as to ensure that Naruto wasn't under Hikari's influence. It still made him laugh when he thought about their irrational fear of a woman that loved him. Shino was coming to be Naruto's best friend, and they could often be seen working together during their D-rank missions. Shibi and Shino had both kept their word, and had not informed anyone of Naruto's secret. Not that Shibi knew much, and Naruto was happy to see he could trust someone with his secrets after so long. He really didn't like hiding everything, but it was necessary for now. Currently, Naruto was working on the seal that was on his back. He had made liberal use of Kage Bunshin, and had several teams studying the separate parts of the seal. He himself was looking at the loyalty seal, and couldn't decide between praising the man who made this or throwing him into the deepest pits of hell. He was leaning toward the latter. Either this guy was a seal master of the highest caliber, and is hiding seals that I can't see, or he just didn't give a rat's ass about the target of this seal. If I even try to remove this thing, there's a good chance I'll fry my brain, Naruto said in frustration. Suddenly he found his head in between two fleshy globes, and a sweet lilting voice flowing into his ears. Calm yourself, Naruto-kun, a woman said. Naruto took a deep breath, and smiled softly. Good. Now guess who? She said, smirking behind him, as she wrapped her arms around his neck, and pulled him closer. Naruto chuckled. I'm gonna guess Hikari-chan, he said childishly. Hikari laughed, as she stepped back, and twirled when he spun around in his chair. She winked at him, and giggled. Good guess. How did you know? She asked, mock pouting. Naruto simply smiled. Anko-chan is on a mission for this week, so it had to be you. Besides, you were back about 3 days ago, he replied, as he gave her a look that said, start explaining. Hikari chuckled nervously, and said, sorry about that. She turned to the hallway. Oh, Ammy-chan. Get in here, she yelled into the hallway. Naruto's sweat dropped, as a woman stepped into the room. She had long silvery white hair that reached her rump, bright electric blue eyes, and a body most women would kill for. She was a good DDU pie size, like Hikari. Her waist was slim, but her ass was large and plump, perfect for fucking, not that Naruto thought that yet. Her legs were slender, but obviously held muscle by the way she walked. She had on a light blue yukata with simple sandals, and she smiled warmly at Naruto. Hello, Naruto-san, it is good to meet you, she said formally. Naruto sat silently before turning, glaring at Hikari. Who said you could bring someone here? He asked angrily that one of the only people he trusted just willingly gave away his hideaway. Hikari visibly shrank back. Ammy-chan has been my friend for centuries, Naruto-kun. Besides, she's only here because you have an interest in Oropedo. She was saddened by his anger. Naruto sighed, and looked back at the woman. I apologize for being so rude, but I have trouble trusting people, and I don't know you one bit. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. May I ask what yours is? I assume it's not Ammy-chan, Naruto said with a slight smirk. The woman had a tick on her forehead for being called that, but sighed, and nodded. My name is Amaterasu. Naruto looked at her curiously until she rolled her eyes, and smiled. Yes, I am the goddess of the sun. I know you may be skeptical, but consider who I came with, she said. Naruto looked over at Hikari, who was still rather sad that Naruto had gotten upset with her, and then chuckled. Good point. Amaterasu-sama, may I inquire as to your reason for being here? Hikari-chan said you were here because of Oropedo, but why? He asked curiously. Amaterasu sighed, and motioned to the table. Naruto nodded, and the human, demon, and god sat down. Naruto sent a Kage Bunshin to get some tea, and Amaterasu spoke. Orochimaru is actually the reincarnation of the 8-headed snake Yamada no Orochi. He seeks to regain his immortality, and tear down the Kamos realms. Unfortunately, Kamos cannot directly interfere in mortal affairs until a sure threat has been recognized. As it is, he holds only a bastardized version of immortality, and nowhere near enough power to tear down the heavens. However, every kami is allowed certain privileges. He holds the Kuzunaji, which is actually my blade. I am allowed, by kami law, to retrieve it from him. she said. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement. Hikari had briefed him on several celestial and demonic disputes in case they ever affected him through her. Naruto's clone had returned, and set down 3 sets of tea for the people. Naruto noted that Hikari still looked sad, and sighed. He leaned over, and tapped her shoulder. Naruto smirked. Next time just tell me you're bringing friends over. And quit being sad, it just doesn't suit you, Naruto said. Hikari smiled, and nodded, as a blushing Amaterasu cleared her throat. The 2 future mates blushed, and Amaterasu chuckled. Good to see you two so happy. In any case, I need assistance in finding and fighting Orochimaru, so I was wondering if we could join forces, so to speak. I know you want to hunt him down for what he did to Anko-san. What do you say? She asked. Naruto looked at Hikari, who nodded. I think this would be a mutually beneficial thing, so yes. Your assistance would be most helpful, Naruto said, as they shook hands. I would like to inform you that there's no way I can fight Orochimaru at my current level. Amaterasu nodded. I know that, but we have time to fix it. Besides, we need to find him first. I have a feeling that he will come after this village because it stands for everything he hates, and it's the place that denied him power as Hokage, she said. Hikari nodded in agreement. Right, he's awfully conceited that way. She turned to Naruto. We should up your training and try to find out how to do elemental manipulation. Naruto nodded. That's a good idea. However, this seal I'm working on comes first, he said. The 2 females looked at him curiously until he sighed and explained the seal to them. Needless to say, they were both pissed. Hikari was even a little mad at herself for not noticing it. Amaterasu was livid that they could so callously treat another human this way. Naruto shook his head when they both commented on destroying something. We mustn't stoop to their level. I will prove them wrong about me, but even if I can't, I'll still protect those precious to me, and say damn those who believe me to be a demon, Naruto said. Hikari and Amaterasu smiled. Now let's get to work on this seal. Amaterasu, if you have any knowledge, it'd be much appreciated. If not, then please make yourself at home, Naruto said. Luckily, Amaterasu had some knowledge in seals, and another view was always welcome. Time skip. 3 days, girls' night out. Anko had returned from her mission yesterday, and had met the new female now residing at Naruto's hideaway. Naruto had given her 3 special seal tags that she had asked for, and she patted her trench coat pocket happily. It had taken him most of the week to supply the chakra to them, but he was happy to help her out. He had also told her that she could reveal her curse mark removal, but to keep just who did it until he removed that pesky seal from his back. Anko smiled seeing the girls all sitting at a corner table, and promptly ran over and joined them, discreetly slipping a sound disruption seal onto the booth. Naruto really is useful with those things, she thought happily, as she took her seat next to Kurenai. Hello girls, she said cheerily. Hana smiled at her. Hey Anko, how's it going? She asked. Anko smiled brightly. Great, why do you ask? She replied. Hana shrugged. You just seem happier than usual, she said. Anko chuckled. There's a reason for that, but first, what were you girls talking about? She asked. Yugao sighed. Those anti-rape seals that have been going around recently. We can't seem to get our hands on some, she said sadly. Kurenai nodded. They only seem to sell them to the kunoichi who are sent specifically into seduction. That's not even mentioning the price, she said. Anko nodded her head, as well, but thought, well of course. Naruto-kun made sure that those girls got them first so that they could protect themselves. After all, it was child's play for him to get the list of girls from the administration building. Talk about low security. Although he can hide from ANBU. Hana shook her head. I just wished we could get each one. You never know when they could come in handy, she added. Meanwhile, Higarashi's shop. Naruto performed his version of the henge, the actual transformation, because he poured enough chakra into it, and walked inside. He was a tall man at 6 feet 8 inches with a long black trench coat, sunglasses, a face mask, and a hat. He tipped his hat to Tenten, who nodded, and made his way to the back. He smiled seeing Hiroshi working the forge. Hiroshi looked up, and smiled at one of his best sources of income. Ah, Tatsumaki-san, it's good to see you. Those anti-rape seals are genius. They sell extremely well, he said smiling. Tatsumaki raised an eyebrow. How much have you been selling them for? He asked. Hiroshi smiled. You sold them to me for $50, but the demand was so big after the first batch that they have been going for about $200 to $300 per seal. We are making a huge profit, he said happily. I don't know the conversion, so sorry guys. If someone could help me out, I'd be grateful. Now Hiroshi was no bad guy, but he was a businessman, and Naruto understood that. However, these seals were special. They were for preventing something that Naruto utterly despised, and he was not happy with the price of his invention. Tatsumaki glared at Hiroshi through his glasses. Hiroshi visibly shrank because if he lost this resource he would lose a very large portion of his business. You mean to tell me that my anti-rape seal is becoming to the very people that it was made to protect? He asked angrily. Hiroshi frowned. Most can still afford it, but your demands have been met. All of the girls in seduction and infiltration have received at least 2, at discounted prices. I just didn't think that the price would be driven so high, he replied. Hiroshi may have been a large man and a retired chunin, but he knew that seal masters were very rare and very powerful. Tatsumaki sighed. Very well. Drop the price to $75 to $100 per. You still turn a profit, and it becomes affordable to all kunoichi, aside from genin, because they have no real need for it. If they do, well, they will have to save. It takes too much time and energy to make them for any less, he said, and Hiroshi nodded. Tatsumaki smiled behind his mask. Now, I have something you may be interested in. Hiroshi's eyes sparkled. Whenever Tatsumaki showed him something new, he was always assured something interesting. I know your daughter is a weapons mistress. Well, imagine if she could put a seal on her enemy that gave him a magnetic charge, he said. Hiroshi smiled brightly, and the gleam in his eye brightened as Tatsumaki pulled out a tag and stuck it on a nearby wall. Kai, he said, as he focused chakra to it. Immediately, all the tools big enough to fly flew straight into the wall. Hiroshi's smile threatened to split his face. This way, even if the person dodges, they will probably get hit because of the magnetic field. What do you think? Tatsumaki asked. Hiroshi turned to Tatsumaki with dollar signs in his eyes. How much, and where do I sign? He asked, earning a chuckle from his partner. Back with the girls. Anko's hand reached into her pocket and pulled out 3 tags before slapping them in front of her friends. Kurenai picked one up, and her jaw dropped. How did you get these? She asked, surprised. The other girls picked up their tags, and surprise adorned their faces, as well. Anko shrugged with a soft smile on her face. I know the guy who makes them. I'm afraid I can't tell you who yet, but I should be able to tell you in about a month if my guess is correct, she said. Hana stared at her incredulously. How do you know this guy? He's gotta be a seal master to make something so complex, she said. Anko's smile widened slightly, and she pulled down her collar to show her curse mark, or rather her lack of curse mark. It's the same guy that removed this thing from me. The same guy that saved me from being raped. So you can understand why I'm not going to tell you, she said softly. What? Rang out across the table, as the 3 girls sat stunned at what was just told to them. Anko, if what you say is true, then why doesn't he showcase his skills? He'd be heralded as a seals master, Kurenai said, shocked. Anko shook her head. I can't say. All I will say is that he will come out eventually, but he refuses to do so now because he would be in danger, she said. Hana nodded. All right. I say we drop this matter until Anko tells us, because I don't want to lose her friendship or her trust, she stated. Anko looked at Hana and smiled. Thanks, Hana-chan. Hana simply nodded back, and the girls agreed to keep it quiet until Anko told them otherwise. They spent the rest of the day in the spa, simply enjoying themselves. Anko waved goodbye to her friends as she made her way back to the hideout. Time warp. After Naruto left the Higurashi shop, Naruto had removed the hinge, but bought some sunglasses that seemed to complete his look. He made his way back to his lab, after making sure no one was following him, and entered to find the groups of clones working with Hikari and Amaterasu to try and unravel the seal in a way so as to not destroy his brain. He sighed as he sat down at his desk and looked at the seal again. He'd been working on it nearly non-stop, and he was honestly tired of it. Hikari stopped helping the clones and walked over to Naruto. She draped herself over the chair and wrapped her arms around him. What's wrong with Naruto? She asked. Naruto leaned back into her embrace and replied, I'm just tired of this seal. Hikari frowned. Then why don't you let your clones handle it and work on something else? It's not like the seal is going anywhere, she said. Naruto sighed. You're right. I just don't like the idea of anyone being able to control me like this, Naruto told her. Hikari nodded. I understand, but it seems that the seal also transmits a chakra signal to the user, probably Danzo. You could place a suppression seal on it, but he may notice it, she said. Naruto slumped in his chair before sighing again. You're right. I'll wait till I'm closer to unraveling this before I suppress it. I'll try and unlock that last seal on my arm instead, he said. Hikari smiled and turned Naruto's head to kiss him lightly. Good idea, maybe we can figure out who that man is? She said. Naruto nodded, and got to work. Hikari smiled seeing Naruto focus fully again, without distractions, and went back to helping the clones. Amaterasu was watching, and smiled seeing her longtime friend have such a good relationship with someone like Naruto. Hikari had told her almost everything she could about Naruto. Hikari knew that it was safe to do so simply because Camus did not interfere in the mortal realm, so she wouldn't give out anything. Besides, being friends for centuries helps too. Naruto spent the next 3 hours slowly applying chakra to the complex seal on his arm, trying to find the unlocking mechanism inside the array. He slowly pushed chakra through the various lines of the seal, searching for dead ends, traps, and false releases. It was much like a grid that had pieces and sections that were nothing but traps. Anko walked in just as a puff of smoke surrounded Naruto's arm, and he yelled, "Eureka! I got it!" He looked up and smiled at the women and clones in the room, looking every bit the 12-year-old he was. The girls all smiled, and Naruto turned back to the leather-bound research journal with a note taped onto the front. Naruto looked at it curiously until he picked it up and started to read. The girls came and quietly read it over his shoulder. "Dear Naruto, I'm sorry. I know I said that earlier, but I feel the need to say it again. If you have reached this level, then know that I am proud to call you my son and my successor. In this journal are all my notes on the 2 jutsus that made me both famous and infamous in the Third Shinobi War, the Rasengan and the Harem, Flying Thunder God. Both are formidable justice, and I hope you use them wisely. One last thing before I go, I love you, son, and I hope that you and your mother still love me as well." Naruto sat silent for a moment, as the eyes bugged out of Anko's head. Suddenly, he started laughing hysterically. The girls all looked at him as he held the note. He turned towards Hikari, who was on his left, and crushed the note to his chest. Tears were streaming down his eyes. He slowly stopped laughing and started sobbing. The 3 girls quickly pulled him into a hug, and Hikari whispered quiet comforts to her container. Nearly 10 minutes later, Naruto had stopped crying and was wiping the tears from her face. The girls let him go, and he put the note back onto the journal. He stared quietly at it for a second before he turned his gaze to the girls. They were all quietly amazed at his sight. This was not the boy they had just comforted, as he found his father's notes. This was the man that would master these jutsu, and bring the world to its knees should they stand in his way. The 4th son, huh? Well, Naruto-kun, I can't say I'm surprised. You are a carbon copy of him, and you're a master of seals, Anko said with a smirk. Amaterasu and Hikari's eyebrows both disappeared into their hairlines. So, what you gonna do, Naruto-kun? With these jutsu, you could leave Konoha and go pretty much anywhere with assured backing from the hidden village you choose, she said. Naruto shook his head. No way. My Tsunade gave his life for this village. Not the people in the village, but the will of fire that he believed in. I believe that, and I will make these people honor his sacrifice if I have to. Get ready, Konoha, because the Kuroi Senko Yellow Flash will rise again, Naruto said with conviction. He immediately sat down and began to study the notes for the Rasengan. The girls all smiled, and Anko began to help him understand shape manipulation while the 2 immortals went back to helping the clones. Time skip, 2 weeks. Naruto stood in the forest of death smirking. He focused chakra to the palm of his right hand as his left spun over it. He dashed forward at ANBU speeds and slammed his palm into a large boulder while yelling, "Rasengan!" The boulder shattered into pieces as Naruto retracted his hand and noticed the damage. He smiled. It had taken him a week to learn the jutsu using his clones as a support to make it. Another week to make it with only his hands, and in a 5-second interval. Now he needed to work on making it with one hand, and making it in under 2 seconds. Anko whistled in appreciation as she noticed the craters from the various Rasengans that Naruto had made. "Nice work, Naruto-koi," she said loudly as she landed in the clearing. Naruto turned to her and smiled brightly. "Thanks, Hibiheim," he replied. Anko felt her face heat up slightly, but smirked anyway, and said, "If you don't head back now, you're going to miss your team meeting," she told him. Naruto looked at the sun and yelped as he dashed off into the forest yelling, "I'm gonna be late." Anko chuckled, and Sunshine went to her apartment. She had just gotten back from a mission and was dead tired. Naruto hopped out of the trees and into the clearing that was training ground 10. He landed just in time to meet with his team without any complaints. Naruto scratched the back of his head and chuckled. "Sorry guys," he said, as they all turned to him. Yamato simply smiled. "It's fine, Naruto. You aren't late, but we have to hurry to get our mission for today, he said, as he walked towards town and the Hokage office. They quickly followed their sensei, and the group was soon standing in front of the Hokage. Yamato stepped forward and said, Team 10 reporting for their D-rank mission, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi smiled warmly. Team 10. We only have one mission left for today, and that's to paint Mrs. Hakurasuga's fence. Will you accept this mission? He asked. Yamato nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama, he replied, as he took the scroll. He turned to his team and said, Team 10 proceed to Mrs. Hakurasuga's house and wait for me there. I have to speak with the Hokage about one of my previous assignments. His team nodded and walked out of the office, although Naruto eyed him warily. Sarutobi looked at Yamato and activated a silencing seal. Report, he said. Yamato nodded. Nothing new, sir. He still doesn't trust me or Ino, although he does seem to have a friendship with Shino. He doesn't appear to have any friends inside the village aside from the ramen stand people, Shino, and you, sir. The villagers still treat him like the plague even when he's with his team. I can honestly say that if he decided to leave, there isn't much stopping him, he said. Sarutobi sighed. Thank you. Tell me though, do you believe him to be a threat to Konoha? He asked seriously. Yamato stood silent for a moment before answering. I do not believe he would attack Konoha outright, sir, he said stoically. Sarutobi nodded. Very well, continue your observation, he said, as he dismissed the sound seal and his ninja. Yamato shunshined to his team, as the Sandaime picked up his tobacco pipe. Please, Naruto. I have made many decisions for the greater good. I don't want to order your death. I don't want to make another mistake, he thought to himself, as he resumed his work. Hakurasuga's house, 9 a.m. Team 10 arrived at their destination and walked through the door. Mrs. Hakurasuga was a pleasantly plump old lady with several cats and a picket fence around her yard. She had several cans of white paint and brushes for them to use. When she saw Naruto, she sneered. However, she turned to Ino and Shino and said, Why don't you two start on the work? I'll bring you a nice cup of lemonade out soon, she said sweetly. Ino quickly set to work, whilst Shino seemed to hesitate before Naruto nudged him quietly. Yamato shunshined to the location just as Mrs. Hakurasuga turned to Naruto with a sneer on her face. You, little demon, are to work on the other side of the fences. I can't have you corrupting those poor children more than you have, she said, as she thrust a brush and some paint into his hands. This was the scene that Yamato shunshined into. He frowned when she waved cheerily to him, and noticed that Naruto did, as she said, but his hands were gripping the paint and the brush rather tightly. Hello? I'm happy to see such bright, energetic faces working on my fence, she said to him. He nodded, and she proceeded to ramble on about the two who were working before she walked inside to make some lemonade, as she promised. Yamato was about to walk over to Naruto when Ino stopped painting next to him. Yamato-sensei? Why does everyone treat Naruto so badly? His pranks weren't that bad, she said. She still hadn't caught on to Yusan's gentle proddings about Naruto. Yamato sighed. All I can say is that they see him as something he's not for reasons out of his control. Don't dig too deep, you may not like what you find, he said seriously, as Mrs. Hakurasuga came out with 4 glasses of lemonade. She swiftly handed them out to the genin and their sensei before heading over to Naruto with the last one. She picked it up and drank it in front of him before heading back inside to do the dishes. She spent most of the morning torturing Naruto, and Yamato grew sick of it. He tried to speak up, but Naruto always seemed to comment about something else. He wondered about that, as the mission came to a close, and Mrs. Hakurasuga handed out the mission payment, but refused to pay Naruto. You didn't work at all, she said to him, as she turned her back and started into the house. Yamato opened his mouth, but Naruto simply chuckled and covered his sensei's mouth before the door slammed in their faces. Yamato turned and glared at Naruto, saying, Naruto, I don't know why you kept me from saying something, but you better have a good reason for stopping me from berating a civilian who was harassing a ninja, he said seriously. Naruto stared at him for a moment before he put his hands in his pockets and headed towards the Hokage tower. He shrugged and said, It won't change her mind, so why bother? It'll take more than idle threats to make them realize they're wrong. Yamato closed his mouth, and the team started to follow Naruto. They still had to turn in the mission report anyways. They walked into the Hokage office, and Sarutobi smiled at them. Team 10. Glad to see you back, he said. Naruto stepped forward and said, GG. I request 2 C-rank lightning jutsu in reparation for my non-payment at the hands of one Mrs. Hakurasuga. The people in the room stood shocked. Sarutobi cleared his throat I'm afraid that's not possible for Naruto. If she refused to pay you, he said before Naruto interrupted him, as he walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out the book on Konoha Charter. Naruto flipped through the pages and read aloud, if any ninja is denied payment by a civilian of Konoha, that ninja is allowed respiration in the form of nin, gen, tai, irio, or fuinjutsu scrolls from the Konoha vault. 1D rank is equal to 2C rank, 1C rank is equal to 1B rank, and 1C rank, 1B rank is equal to 1A rank, and 1B rank, 1A rank is equal to 2A rank, 1S rank is equal to 1S rank, Naruto stated. The people on his team stood silently, as Sarutobi eyed his surrogate grandson. Eventually he sighed very well. I will also be adding Mrs. Hakurasuga to the blacklist. I am sorry, Naruto, he said. Naruto shrugged. I got a good deal out of it in my opinion. However, I will no longer take this abuse sitting down, Aji-san. Your methods have not worked, so I will resort to my own if it becomes necessary, he said seriously. Sarutobi took a hit of his pipe and nodded sadly. Good, thanks Aji-san. I'll take those scrolls when I come in tomorrow. Ja-na, he said, as he shunshined away. The room was quiet until Shino spoke. Well, that was a well thought out reaction. Well done, Naruto-san, he said before returning to his compound. The other 3 occupants of the room just silently went their separate ways, except the Sandame, who was hoping Naruto wouldn't go overboard. Time skip. 2 weeks. 4 weeks since discovery of seal. Naruto sat in his lab smiling. He had just cracked the seal that, he was now sure, Danzo had placed on him. The seal obviously didn't take into account the applicant's body or mind when used, and it was just too inhumane for the fabled Sandane to use. Danzo was another matter entirely. He nodded, as Hikari and Amaterasu congratulated him, and helped him set up the sealing tags to destroy the seal, and allow it to be seen. He got up, and got dressed in his usual attire. He turned to Amaterasu, and said, if myself or Hikari doesn't return in a day, destroy this place, and leave. I don't want you to be hurt, alright? Amaterasu nodded. Very well, just don't get hurt, ya hear me? She said with a smirk. Naruto smirked back. Yeah, Jesse, you get more, and more like Hikari every day, he said. Youch, he yelled, as Hikari smacked him upside the head. What was that? She asked. Naruto chuckled. Nothing. Now will you go back to the seal? We have a grandpa to visit, Naruto said. Hikari nodded and disappeared. Amaterasu kissed him on the cheek, for good luck, and giggled, as he disappeared into the air. It was gonna be one hell of a day. In a secret cave below Konoha, an old man with bandages over half his face, and his right arm sat in his secret base, waiting for his root member to return with the information he ordered. He frowned, as he thought of just why he had to spy on Naruto Uzumaki. After the announcement of a Jinchuriki being made, Sarutobi had vehemently denied Danzo access to the demon, and this had infuriated the old war hawk to no end. He had been able to apply a certain seal to the boy's back, with aid from Orochimaru of course. That was good news. The bad news? He had to watch, as Konoha's most valuable tool was reduced to a blithering idiot in orange. The boy may be loyal, but he was as worthless as a blunt kunai. I mean, with him seeking attention everywhere, and the teachers sabotaging his performance, how could he be of any use? Then, he had the unique fortune of learning that Naruto was hiding his skills. Perhaps he wasn't as useless as Danzo originally thought? He had sent some rude agents to tail him in his month of being a genin, and was thoroughly surprised that he seemed to disappear at random times, and once with the Aburame mare. Finally, he had grown frustrated, and simply ordered him to be tailed from his home in the mornings till they lost him, and to wait at Ichiraku's ramen stand, the Hokage Tower, or his house. He had also ordered the only Hyuga he had, to ensure that the seal was undamaged. He looked up just as he felt the telltale chakra signature of his spy. His spy looked like a regular NBU, with a blank face mask, and promptly dropped to a knee. Report, Danzo said forcefully. The root member nodded, and replied monotonously, Sir, Naruto Uzumaki was seen exiting one of the outerlying forests. As instructed, we had Rat use his Byakugan to ensure that the seal was still undetected. Unfortunately, Rat informed us that the seal is visible via 4 seal tags none of us have encountered before. Danzo's eyes widened. How? No one but Jiraiya should have the skills to allow the seal to be shown, and he hasn't been to Konoha in 12 years. He was infuriated. The root member only spoke again. My apologies, sir. I do not know how, but Naruto Uzumaki was also headed for the Hokage Tower. Danzo started to sweat bullets. If Hiruzen sees that seal, then I'm going to have to blame someone else or destroy my whole operation, he thought. However, if the brat suddenly starts experiencing pain, then the old fool will probably take him to the hospital, and I can take care of him before they find the seal. Danzo weighed a few other options before deciding that the aforementioned course was the best, and proceeded to go to the Hokage Tower. He needed to be in range for the technique after all. He turned to the rude agent and said, "Prepare the doctors, they need to remove those seal tags," he said before exiting the cave. Hokage Tower, same time. Naruto strode up to the doors and pushed them open. The last month has done him well. He could form a Rasengan in under 2 seconds, still working on making it instantly. The 2 jutsu scrolls he had obtained, Right-gun, Raikyu, Lightning Release, Lightning Ball, and Right-gun, Kaminari, Lightning Release, Lightning Surge, were usable, but he had yet to master them. His taijutsu was still about high chunin, but he could move faster than most jounin, guy excluded. He was, obviously, a high-level seal master. His genjutsu was still non-existent, but Hikari and Amaterasu had made sure he could dispel about 90% of them. Naruto strode towards the stairs that lead to the Hokage's office. The secretary scowled at the boy and said, The Hokage is very busy, and he doesn't have time to deal with someone like you." Naruto glared at her with some ki behind it, and she visibly shrank from his gaze. "Aji-sen always makes time for me, and I have something important to tell him, so you better shut up and go back to work," he said coldly, as he took to the secretary meekly and went back to her work. She knew what the Sandaime did to the last secretary to refuse Naruto entry. Naruto quickly ascended the stairs and kicked the Hokage's door open. "Old man, we have something to talk about," Naruto said seriously, as he closed the door behind him. Sarutobi had been having a rather nice day. The paperwork wasn't too bad. Jiraiya had shipped him an early release of the newest Ika Paradise, and the council hadn't bothered him all day. He had sat back in his chair and taken a deep breath from the tobacco in his pipe when his doors were suddenly thrown open, and Naruto striding in, demanding some kind of talk. Sarutobi put his pipe down and looked at Naruto. "What exactly would that be, Naruto-kun?" he asked. Naruto eyed him for a minute before turning around and slapping a seal on the door and muttering a quick kai. The room glowed a bright blue for a second before it died down. "That was a silencing barrier and genjutsu seal that will make anyone who listens and believe we are talking about my last E-rank mission. The old lady harassed me, so I thought it would be a good cover," Naruto explained. If Sarutobi had been holding his pipe, he would have dropped it. He stared at Naruto. "How can you make a seal like that?" he asked, shocked. Naruto shrugged. "I've been studying seals for years now, Aji-san, but that's not why I came here, and let's keep on topic," Naruto replied. The Hokage was still trying to compose himself when Naruto rushed forward at his max speed, surprising the not yet recovered old man, and slapped a seal onto the Hokage's chest. It glowed blue with activation, and Naruto spoke before the Sandaime could ask, "That is a truth seal. Anything you speak must be the truth, or it will change colors to red. A half-truth will appear as yellow, but I may allow those to slide depending on the question. You will answer my questions or I will leave this village," Naruto said seriously. Naruto stayed silent, as Sarutobi thought over several scenarios in his head before glaring at Naruto. "What makes you think you can come in here and order me around like this, Naruto? For that matter, why would you come here simply to ask questions? Ever since the Genin exams, I haven't been able to trust you, Naruto, and this is making it increasingly difficult to do so," he responded. Naruto glared back at the Hokage. "I need answers, old man, and you're going to give them to me. You failed horribly at protecting me all my life." "You? Oh, me," Naruto said forcefully. Sarutobi looked visibly saddened by this. Naruto interrupted him. "You're wasting time, Aji-san. I don't want your apologies, nor your excuses. I want answers," he yelled, as he slammed his hands down on the Hokage's desk. Sarutobi flinched and bowed his head. "All right, what do you want to know?" "I can answer some questions, but I will try to answer as many as I can," he replied sadly. Naruto nodded in satisfaction and said, "How many seals are on my body?" Sarutobi sighed. "Only one," he replied. The seal glowed a bright blue, signifying truth. Suddenly his eyes went wide, as he thought, if he's been studying seals, then he may know of the Kyuubi. Damn it, how am I gonna explain that? Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Only the Shiki Fujin, correct?" he said. Sarutobi's head whipped up, and his eyes connected to Naruto's. "You know?" he asked slightly fearfully. Naruto nodded yes, again off subject. "Back to my question?" he stated. Sarutobi's eyes seemed to get even sadder. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Naruto. As to your question, yes, only the Shiki Fujin, he replied sadly. Again, the seal glowed a bright blue. Naruto sighed happily, and relaxed into the chair in front of the Hokage's desk. That's good news, Aji-san. I was afraid that you had ordered the extra seals, and that I would have to take drastic measures, he said with a rather light tone. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes. What extra seals? He said seriously. Naruto looked at him, and said, one last question, and I guess I can answer that one. What was the seal on my jumpsuit for? Sarutobi sat silently, going over possible answers in his head, before responding. It was a genjutsu seal designed to make your life easier. The seal glowed yellow, but Naruto already knew about the seal's true purpose, so he left it alone for now. Naruto nodded very well. The extra seals. One was a seal to keep me from meeting Kyuubi that broke about 2 years ago. Please hold all questions and comments until I'm done, Aji-san, Naruto said, as he noticed Sarutobi opening his mouth, and fear coming across his features. The second seal is really a conglomerate of 3 separate seals. I am currently counteracting the loyalty seal, but the other 2 are harder to see, as they aren't active, and I really can't stop them from working without knowing their effects. Still, the conglomerate seal has a loyalty, mind destruction, and summoning seal all rolled into one. The loyalty was to Konoha, the mind destruction was probably stolen from the Hyugas, and the summoning summons shinobi from something called root, Naruto said, eyeing the Hokage. Sarutobi stiffened when Naruto mentioned root. The first seal didn't really affect Sarutobi too much, but the following 2 made him worry greatly. Only Danzo would be so bold as to put a seal like this on Naruto. Naruto noticed the Hokage stiffening, and said, you know root, don't you? Sarutobi nodded, and sighed. It's a, now defunct, branch of ANBU that was created in the Third War, and the Yondaime shut it down shortly after coming into office. Danzo Shimura was the head, and I thought he was running underground, but had no proof, he replied. The seal glowed blue once again, and Naruto nodded his head. So what are you going to do? Naruto never got to finish his sentence, as pain erupted in his head. Naruto? Naruto! Hikari roared in his mindscape, as she flooded his brain with her chakra to counteract the seal. Apparently, someone had decided that the mind destruction was best used right now. Sarutobi was instantly by Naruto's side, as he grunted in pain while holding his head. Naruto, what's wrong? He asked. Say seal activation AGHUCRK. Tags, Naruto said, as he doubled over in pain. Sarutobi frowned, and immediately started pulling off Naruto's clothes in an effort to find the seal. He pulled off Naruto's shirt so Naruto had only his pants and sandals on when he noticed the seal glowing angrily on his back. He quickly moved to the seal tags around the edges before noticing that they really didn't have anything that would help in the removal of the seal. He was no seals expert, but he could identify most seals. He rushed for Naruto's jacket and dug into the pocket before finding 3 seals. Each one had a kanji on it: summon, loyalty, and mind. The Sannin quickly rushed back to Naruto and slapped the seals onto their corresponding areas, and channeled chakra into the tags. He sighed in relief, as he saw the seal become rigid, and shatter, the ink flowing off of Naruto's back, and onto the seal tags before bursting into flames, and falling to the floor. Naruto's eyes rolled into the back of his head, and he passed out from the sudden removal of pain. Sarutobi checked his pulse, and noticed that it was strong, and steady. He let out a breath he hadn't even known he was holding. He removed his fingers from the boy's pulse, and took out a handkerchief. He wiped the sweat from Naruto's brow, and smiled softly. You continue to amaze me. You're so much like your father it's unreal. Suddenly his eyes hardened. Danzo had gone too far this time. He walked up to the seal on the door, and ripped it off. He snapped his fingers, and 2 ANBU appeared by his side. Summon the council, and the Jounin Corp. All ANBU are to assemble, and report to the Hokage Tower immediately. Also, summon Anko Mitarashi to my office. As of now, I am declaring a state of martial law, and no one gets in or out of Konoha without my personal approval. Go, he said authoritatively. The 2 ANBU quickly sunshine away, and he turned back to Naruto. You're right, Naruto. I failed to protect you. Your father would be ashamed of me, he said sadly, but no more. These civilians have forgotten that this is a military dictatorship, and I am playing games. I may be too old for this, but I will fight for you one last time, and I will win, he said forcefully, his eyes shining with strength long since forgotten. This was the sight that Anko shunshined into. She stood silently before clearing her throat. When the Hokage turned to her, she was staring worriedly at Naruto. "Is he okay?" she asked. He nodded. "He will be fine." "Tell me, how much do you know?" he asked seriously. She looked at the old Hokage and quietly sized him up. "Everything. He removed my curse seal," she said, gaining wide eyes from the Hokage. He removed your seal," he said honestly, surprised. She nodded and smiled softly while pulling down her collar, showing her unblemished shoulder. "Incredible," Sarutobi said, as he shook his head. "Anko Mitarashi, as of now, your job is to protect Naruto Uzumaki. I know you will do a good job." "I have some house cleaning to do," Sarutobi said, as he donned his Kage robes and the hat. Anko nodded. "Good. By the way, NO1 aside from myself is allowed into the office. Understood?" he said. Anko nodded again. Sarutobi nodded back and headed out the door just as the two ANBU returned to flank him. The Nico, cat, masked ANBU nodded to her superior when he looked at her, and said, "Your orders have been carried out. All Jounin and ANBU are assembled, and the council is convening, as we speak, sir." Sarutobi nodded. "Go ahead of me, and make sure every single council member is here. If they aren't, drag them here kicking and screaming if you have to. Return to me when it is done," he said, causing the two ANBU to bow and disappear. "No longer Naruto. I will set things right. If not for Konoha, then for you," he thought, as he awaited his ANBU. Naruto's mindscape. Directly after CO removal, Naruto appeared in front of Hikari's cage, which was modeled as a 2-story spa resort. "Hell no, I'm not going room by room. Use your imagination for the setup." Naruto quickly strode up to the resort and walked into the den/welcoming area. It had a giant TV, and Hikari was panting sitting on the couch in front of it, as she watched the Hokage speak to Naruto. Naruto smiled, along with Hikari, as they saw the Hokage start the way to recovering the Konoha that Naruto's father sacrificed his life for. Naruto smiled. "Thanks for healing me, Hikari-chan. I appreciate it," he said, as he sat down next to her. Hikari immediately prompted him. "You baka. You should have just removed the damn thing when you could," she replied angrily. Naruto hugged her and said, Ma, it all worked out. I'm just glad I can trust the old man again." Hikari separated from him and glared slightly. "He's still lying to you, you know," she replied. Naruto waved his hand. "I'll ask him about that later. Besides, from the notes I got from Tusan, it seems as if he thought my Ka-san would still be around. I have a feeling something else is afoot, and it's not just Danzo," he said. Hikari sighed and nodded. "You may have removed that seal, but you're still as forgiving as ever," she said. Naruto shrugged. "That's one thing you can thank the old man for. Although I'll probably punch him for it later," Naruto replied before muttering something about old men and their meddling ways. Hikari giggled. Fine. Would you like to wake up now? I'm pretty sure the council has convened, and you can catch Danzo in the act," she said. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I think it's time Danzo gets his due," he replied with a downright foxy smirk. Hikari's grin threatened to break her face. "Oh man, that dude won't know what hit him. I can't wait to see what Naruto-kun will do. I always love a good prank and or fight," she thought, as she expelled Naruto from his mind. Council chambers, same time. All the council members were in attendance. The various clan heads, Danzo, Hamura, Koharu, and the various civilians. The Jounin Corps were assembled below the clan heads while the ANBU commander was sitting next to the Hokage's seat. The door burst open to reveal a very serious Hiruzen Sarutobi. Danzo was immediately on guard. "I know that old softa hasn't sent the demon container to the hospital yet. Did he die in Sarutobi's office? As soon as this is over, I need to begin setting up Hamura and Koharu so I can get off," he thought connivingly. Sarutobi stalked in and walked up to his seat before sitting down. Koharu, as usual, stood up and looked to her aged teammate, Sandame-sama. "May I inquire as to why you have called the council into session? I was not aware we had a meeting today or any important matters to discuss." She was still unaware of martial law. Sarutobi glared at her until she sat down. "As of 10:18 a.m. this morning, I have declared martial law in Konoha," Sarutobi said calmly. This immediately prompted several reactions across the room. The clan heads were mostly surprised, but other emotions ranged from curious, in most cases, to annoyed, in Hayashi's case. The Jounin were in much the same boat as the clan heads, and were quietly chatting amongst themselves as to why this was happening. The elders and Danzo were eyeing each other warily. They may have to take drastic measures. The civilians were downright livid. Martial law killed all commerce, and would hurt their pocketbooks. How dare the Hokage do such a thing? Sasuke Haruno, mother to Sakura Haruno, stood up and locked eyes with Sarutobi. Hokage-sama, you can't do that. According to the laws passed 13 years ago, the council must be informed before a state of martial law can be declared. What could possibly have been so important that martial law need be applied? She asked forcefully. Sarutobi released his ki upon the room, and everyone was immediately sent to their knees. Danzo, the elders, and the ninja in the room were able to resist it somewhat, but the civilians were hit full force. I find it very curious that a ninja village, like Konoha, has its leader answer to a democratic council that is mainly made up of civilians, Sarutobi said calmly. He lessened his ki, but he was still putting out enough to make everyone nervous. I have grown complacent in recent years. I was not supposed to take this hat again after Minato was appointed, but the Kyuubi saw fit to steal that from me. He made eye contact with all of the clan heads, and said, however, I have had a wake-up call this morning, and I will be cleaning the house until my successor can be found. Surprise made its way across the room, as several people started to gossip as to who could replace the aged legend. Danzo narrowed his eyes and thought, could this have something to do with the container? I need to play my cards carefully here. Koharu stood and looked at Sarutobi again. Who would you choose to succeed you? She asked. Sarutobi cut out his ki at this point, having felt that they understood his point. I was debating on that, and I will be calling back both of my students to speak with them about this. As of now, I will not speculate, he answered neutrally. Danzo felt compelled to speak, and said, you still have not answered why you declared martial law, he pointed out. Sarutobi smirked, and was about to speak when the doors to the council room opened, and Naruto walked in. Anko quickly followed him, and smiled to the Sandaime, who seemed amused that Naruto was making his way towards the center of the room even as whispers broke out across the room. Sasuke stood up. What are you doing here? She screeched. Naruto winced, and said, geez, who let the howler monkey into the council? Sasuke went red-faced, and several snickers went out across the room. Danzo discreetly moved his hand into a seal, and started channeling chakra to kill the boy. Naruto's head immediately snapped to the Warhawk, and he smirked. Care to tell us why you're channeling chakra, One Eye? He asked. Everyone's gaze turned to the old Warhawk, and he stopped his chakra flow. I don't know what you are talking about, he stated neutrally. Sarutobi focused his gaze onto his old rival. Really? So that wasn't a hand seal to activate something nasty? He asked with a slight undertone of sarcasm. Danzo's eye widened marginally, but he simply responded with a curt no. Naruto raised his hand, and put his pointer finger out. His finger glowed with chakra, and everyone focused on him. His hand suddenly blurred into action, as it wrote a complex seal in under 20 seconds, stunning the onlookers. Fuin, Hiriki, seal, revelation. Suddenly, two Root A and Bu appeared behind Danzo. The room broke out into shock, as Naruto said, perhaps that is the reason for the martial law? Danzo growled, and said, kill him? As the two Root rushed forward, Danzo disappeared into a preset escape hallway that crumbled as he passed certain spots. The two Root charged forward with tantos poised to kill Naruto. Many of the clan heads and Jounin were tensing to move when Naruto smirked. His skin suddenly changed to a dull blackish-gray color. His hair seemed to disappear, and he became bald. His clothes morphed and became twin red lightning bolts racing down the front of his chest and down his legs. On his back they changed into a shape that resembled a hurricane, again red. His eyes stayed the same glorious blue and held mirth as the two tantos struck his chest and bent away from his body. He looks like Greed from FMA, meaning he does not have any genitalia in this form, with lightning bolts on the front and a whirlwind on the back instead of Greed's red lines. Naruto's hands blurred, and he yelled out, right on, Kaminari Saji, lightning release, lightning surge, as he slammed his hands on the ground and electrocuted the two Root agents. He stood up, as Sarutobi looked at him worriedly. Naruto waved his hand. You shouldn't worry so much about Aji-san. They're heartless husks of humanity, he said simply. Sarutobi nodded, and looked at the Jounins, chased down Danzo Shimura. I want every Jounin, an Anbu level ninja on this, Anko excluded. Chunin are to patrol the village, and keep martial law. Go, he said. The Jounin bowed, and vanished. He turned to the civilians. As of now, the civilian council is being reinstated, as an advisory council only. You are dismissed, he said forcefully. The civilians grumbled, but didn't want to mess with the Kami no Shinobi at full force. He turned to the elders, and glared. You two are going to Ibiki to determine whether or not you knew of Danzo's plans, he said, and snapped his fingers, causing two of his trusted ANBU to appear, and dragged the two protecting elders off. He turned to the Shinobi Council, and said, I hope I have your support during this time. They looked at one another until Inuzuka stood up, smirking ferally. You've got my support. I've been telling you to get rid of that old coot for years. What caused it? She asked. Sarutobi chuckled at her rather direct approach. Anko and Naruto were both smirking. Actually, you have young Naruto-kun here to thank for that, he said, causing the clan heads to look at him warily, all except some, that is. She took one look at him, and her mental jaw dropped. Holy hell. That old bastard. I'm gonna get him for lying to me. I wonder if I still have that marriage agreement, she thought. As you can tell, she figured out just who the young boy was related to, now that he had removed that orange jumpsuit. Remember, the jumpsuit had the seal on it, Hayashi coldly said. I highly doubt Uzumaki-san could bring you evidence of Danzo's subterfuge, Shikaku Nara muttered. As Sarutobi turned a glare to the Hyuga clan head, Are you calling me a liar, Hayashi-san? He asked in an icy tone of voice that would make many Hyuga jealous. Hayashi visibly stiffened. Not at all, Hokage-sama. I simply find it unlikely that Uzumaki-san could uncover something even ANBU cannot, he replied carefully. Sarutobi sighed. The evidence was on Naruto-kun himself. Apparently, Danzo had placed a seal that bore an uncanny resemblance to your caged bird's seal, Hayashi-san, Sarutobi said. Hayashi's eyes visibly widened, and he looked at the Hokage. I will be sure to do a thorough investigation into that allegation, he stated. Sarutobi nodded. Very good. However, enough of that. I would like to ask for the clan's support during this time, he said. Some simply nodded, and said, You have the Inuzuka's support, Hokage-sama. I'll pull our retired trackers into duty to try and find Danzo. Sarutobi nodded in acceptance. Shibi stood up, and Aburame's support, Hokage-sama. I too will ask some of our retired members to assist in Danzo's capture, he stated. Sarutobi smiled in seeing two of the best tracking clans in Konoha aiding him so greatly. And Noichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, stood and said, The Yamanakas are behind you 100%, Hokage-sama. We will be happy to interrogate Danzo's route. Sarutobi nodded once again. A mind walking would be good to take care of the interrogations. Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan, muttered his clan's famous troubles, and said, You have the Nara's support, as well. We will assist in the planning and capture of the various cells Danzo may have around town. Sarutobi smiled. The Naros were famous tacticians, and would make storming the cells much easier and effective. Chuzo Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, stood and said, The Akimichi are happy to stand beside you, as always, Hokage-sama. We will focus our efforts on keeping the peace. Sarutobi nodded. The Akimichi were powerful shinobi that civilians and shinobi alike were wary of. Hayashi Hyuga stiffly rose and said, You have the support of the Hyugas, as well. I will personally see to it that the caged bird seal information is secure, and all those with its knowledge are accounted for. Sarutobi stared for a moment before nodding, letting the man know that he expected it done. Hayashi may have been proud, but even he feared the professor. Sarutobi smiled softly. Thank you for your assistance and support in this matter. I will be in my office, so please send all the reports there. He turned to Anko and Naruto. I will speak to you two later. For now, please go somewhere safe. It's rather obvious you have a safe house if you were able to hide your abilities, he said. Naruto and Anko nodded before disappearing. Sarutobi nodded to the clan heads, and they disappeared, as well. Nico, Cat, appeared beside the aged Hokage, as he snapped his fingers. I need you to sweep the office, and these chambers for bugs. After that, join the search. Dismissed, he said before he headed to his office. He had letters to write to his two wayward students. It was time for the Sannin to return home permanently. Naruto's lab. Sometime that night, Naruto and Anko walked into the lab, and Amaterasu smiled at them. Did it go well? She asked. Naruto smiled and nodded. Very well, thanks for asking. I still have a few questions for the old man, but they can wait a few days while he cleans things up, he replied. Anko just walked over to the bed and plopped down. She was still tired from a mission the other day. She promptly went to sleep, feeling very safe inside this lab. Hikari materialized outside of Naruto and quickly glomped on him as he sat down on the couch. You scared me earlier. Don't do that again, you got me? She said, worried about his health. Naruto smiled and kissed her, surprising her and causing a 10-minute game of tonsil hockey. When they broke, they noticed Amaterasu was staring with a slight blush on her face. I'll try not to scare you again, he said with a smirk. Hikari just smirked at Amaterasu. Ami-chan, she said sing-songily. You wouldn't want to switch places with me, would you? She asked sweetly. Amaterasu's blush immediately went full face, and she sputtered for a few seconds before her two friends started laughing. She promptly crossed her arms and said meanies, causing another bout of laughter from the blue-eyed couple. Later that night, Hikari, Naruto, and Anko were snuggled into bed with Naruto being happily glommed by both females. Amaterasu smiled softly, seeing the three people comfortably asleep. She shook her head and thought, those three are truly a group. A demon, and a disgraced pupil. Still, I have a feeling that Naruto is destined for greatness. She watched them for a minute more before walking up to the bed and putting her hand on his head. With a small flash, she stepped back with horror across her face. If I wasn't bound by kami rules, I'd destroy half this city. It's a wonder he can still smile, she thought. Slowly a smile spread across her face, then again, that settles things. It seems I may have a gift for you, Naruto-kun. I hope you can survive it though, she thought, as she disappeared from the material plane. Kami's court, midnight. Amaterasu appeared, and sat down at her seat among the court. Kami turned to her, and Kami's face was grave. Have you made any progress in locating Orochimaru? She asked seriously, causing all eyes to turn to the sun goddess. She sighed, and shook her head. Unfortunately not. I was able to find the boy that Kyuubi-chan told us about. She was correct, he can remove the curse seal, and I feel he may eventually have the power to rid us of Orochimaru for good, she said. Several murmurs rippled across the room until Sora Ryu, Kami of the Dragons, stood up. Ha! I bet none of you thought you'd see him again. Checked my first fanfic for his description, that is very impressive. I'd wish to test the boy myself if you are saying what I think you're saying, he said, as he fingered his twin scimitars. She smiled. I need a second endorsement, but yes, I believe him to be worthy, she stated. Sora smirked. Very well then, I'll endorse him too, he said, shocking many present. Ryujin had never endorsed anyone. Kami quelled the growing murmurs with a loud silence. She then turned to Yami. Shall we then? She asked. Yami chuckled. If he has their backing, then yes we should. Besides, we need a champion to take down Orochi theme, she replied. They turned to the court and said, in 3 weeks' time, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze will take the immortality trials. Ryujin shall test his honor and courage. Sora smirked and let out a roar of approval. Inari shall test his cunning and intelligence. A man with short red hair and red eyes stood up with a smile that was eerily reminiscent of Naruto's own. And Susanoo shall test his heart and determine his place. A man with black hair and stormy gray eyes smiled as he looked at his sister. This is gonna be fun, Susanoo said. The rest of the gods immediately broke out in gossip as to whether or not the mortal would pass his test. Yugito was having a bad day. Why was she having a bad day? Well, that stems back to the council of her village and her status in the village. You see, the council has been putting pressure on the Yondaime Reikage of Kumo to put her under a loyalty seal. Now what's the word? Ah yes, nifty little seal would make Yugito a mind slave to the council. You see, Yugito was not your average 18-year-old female jounin. She was, in fact, an 18-year-old female Jinchuriki, and that made all the difference in the world. The council believed her to be a flight risk, and that, seeing as she was the container for the Nibi no Nikomata, they should have complete control over her actions to ensure her loyalty, not that it had ever been in question. She knew what they really wanted. Most of Kumo respected Killer Bee, Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, because he was the shield that protected them, not to mention he was the brother to the current Reikage. Unlike Killer Bee, however, Yugito was still treated rather harshly. They weren't obvious about it, more like calling her a demon whore and a cat slut behind her back while being overcharged or refused service in some places. She was never physically abused, and for that she was happy. However, the council wanted her to be their personal fuck toy. She knew it. After all, they had several S-rank seduction missions that they had attempted to send her on. She had refused every single one of them because that wasn't her specialty. Not to mention, she was a virgin, and proud of it. Oh sure, she had dated a few guys, but they all seemed to just want to brag to their friends that they had tamed the demon. Yeah, they wouldn't be taming anyone else because they were still in the hospital. She sighed. Long story short, she was having a bad day because people had been treating her worse, and worse after finding out about the council's proposal. Her spotless reputation was being called into question, and she had just come from yet another council meeting where they grilled her for some obscure mission, not to mention the subtle hints that if she just took the seduction missions then they would leave her be. She just wanted to be left alone, and respected like Killer Bee. Was that too much to ask for? Still, there were some good points in her life. Samui, a miniature Tsunade without strength, was her sister in all but blood. Ever since they had met under Killer Bee's training, they had been close, and she thanked her stars that Samui was always there to aid her. Omoi and Karui were also pretty good friends, but they were more engrossed in their little love/hate game than worried about helping her. Killer Bee and it's pronounced A, had been protecting her rather well. She could turn down the council's missions with E's approval, which he always gave, and B had helped her to master Nibi's chakra. Nibi was a sore subject, but she had grown to like Yugito over the years, and ended up agreeing to share Yugito's senses in return for control of Nibi's chakra. So far, they had a pretty good relationship, almost like that annoying older sister that claims it's your conscience, or in this case your perverted side. You see, the Nibi no Nikomoto was a very horny pussycat, pun intended. She loved to tease Yugito about guys, and even girls, that piqued her interest, and she was a shameless being when it came to describing the acts she would take against said peoples. Needless to say, Yugito learned early on to control her blushes, for the most part, and to ignore the perverted ramblings of a cat who's been sagging for 18 years. She simply shook her head free of these thoughts, and continued her walk home. She sighed in contentment, as she walked into her apartment. It was good to be home. Still, she mused, it would be nice to have someone to come home to. Unknown casino/hotel room. Same time/one day from Danzo's flight. Tsunade was furiously packing her things away. Why was she running around the room with her head cut off, you may ask? Well, just a few minutes ago, she won the jackpot on the slots with enough money to pay off all her debts, and a bit more. Now, when the legendary sucker won, she knew something bad was going to happen. After all, the last time she won, she had to deliver Kushina's baby, and the Kyuubi had attacked. Yeah, she didn't get to enjoy those winnings. Too bad for her. Her instincts were correct. A small puff of smoke appeared behind her, and she turned around to view a white and red monkey. One of Sarutobi's personal messengers, as a matter of fact. He held up a scroll with the kanji for family, and said, Hiruzen said to give this to you. I am not to leave until you give me an answer, he said seriously before plopping down on top of Tsunade's suitcase. Tsunade glared at the small primate, but sighed, and snatched up the scroll before applying some blood, and opening it. Not even a minute later she roared, Shizen, causing her wayward apprentice to appear in the room by some cosmic power. Shizen huffed. She had just run up 9 flights of stairs because she had finished sending off the money to the debt collectors, and wanted to relax a bit before Tsunade blew out of here. She suddenly heard Shizen, causing her to double her speed, and appear in front of her. What is Tsunade-sama? She asked curiously. Tsunade glared at the small primate in the room. Pack your bags. We leave for Konoha in 3 minutes. We will be there in 4 days, she said, answering the primate's unspoken question. It bowed, and disappeared to its next assignment. Shizen was stunned, but quietly happy. She did miss the place she had grown up in, although she did wonder why they were returning. They quickly packed and set out. It was time to meet Tsunade's godson, female onsen, somewhere in Kuni, Hot Springs country. Perverted giggling could be heard throughout the surrounding forest near a female-only hot spring. This was the great toad sage Jiraiya, author of Ika Ika Paradise, and a self-proclaimed super pervert. He was doing research for his next book, which meant he was currently peeping on 3 girls who were having a pie-size competition. This probably doesn't happen in real life, but in my FIC it does. Yahugo girls. Needless to say, Jiraiya thought he hit the jackpot. Too bad for him. Tsunade's luck was rubbing off on him. The same little primate appeared in a puff of smoke behind the perverted man, and sweat dropped, as he saw the man didn't even notice him. He cleared his throat 3 times, being ignored every time, before sighing, and kicking the man into the onsen while yelling, pervert, and chuckling, as the girls kicked his ass with their divine fury. When Jiraiya finally returned, he glared at the small primate. The monkey just chuckled, and handed the scroll to Jiraiya saying, Hiruzen told me to wait for a reply. Jiraiya nodded, and opened the scroll, being oddly serious for once. His eyes widened, and he quickly took off running. 4 days. He yelled back to the monkey who smiled, and disappeared. Hokage office, same time. The small monkey reappeared in front of the aged Hokage. He bowed to the aged Hokage, who simply nodded back, and said they will arrive in 4 days, Hiruzen. Sannin nodded, and waved his hand in dismissal. The primate bowed again, and disappeared, He had already received his payment prior to the assignment. It had been a full day since Danzo had been found out by Naruto's actions. Hiruzen did his best searching for the man, but they were having a hard time. Hamura and Koharu were still screaming in their cells about being released, but he just ignored it and ordered Ibiki to take his time with them. He knew he would have a lot of explaining to do when they arrived, but he was putting that off for now. He sighed and took another puff of his pipe. He heard his guards telling someone that he was not to be disturbed before the doors were thrown open, and in walked Some Inuzuka and her companion Kuramaru. She glared at the aged Hokage and, despite his earlier reinforcement, she was still pissed with him. "You have some explaining to do, Sarutobi-san," she said seriously, as she slammed the door shut behind her and in the guards' faces. He glared back at her, while sending some of his rather substantial ki at her, reminding her just who he was. "I was not aware I had to explain myself to the council, Inuzuka-san," he started coldly. Tsum was slightly put off, but shook off his words and ki, before slamming down some papers on his desk and impatiently tapping her foot at him. He sighed and grabbed the papers. He took a good minute to fully read over the papers, his eyes widening as he did so. He put them down and rubbed his temples, leaving us. He ordered the hidden ANBU. They quickly appeared and bowed before disappearing. He reached under the desk and activated a security seal that Yondaime placed in the room. He then looked to the clan head and said, "I would deny that he's alive, but I think this may do the boy some good. Besides, I was planning on informing the boy of his full heritage sometime later this week." After his display in the council room, and the help he gave in producing evidence against Danzo, I believe he has earned at least that. Some smiled. "So you will honor the agreement?" she asked happily. Hiruzen smiled softly. "If they wish, yes. Still, he may have a thing for Anko Mitarashi, so that may get in the way. I will have to speak with him. However, if the girls come to some sort of agreement, I suppose I could mend a few laws to make that work, as well," he said with a smirk that screamed, "I just want to get my grandson as much tang as possible." Some rolled her eyes at that smirk, but chuckled. "I'll speak with Hana about it, and hopefully they will connect," she said happily. She waited for the Sannin to stop chuckling before saying, "You still need to explain why you hid him like that. Why hide his heritage, and yet release his status as a Jinchuriki?" she asked seriously. Sarutobi sighed. "That was a mistake, but Kushina was supposed to be alive. Without her to protect him, IWA could have easily killed him. It is a flimsy excuse considering what the village did, but, at the time, it made sense. I believe they would follow Minato's last wishes to see his son as a hero, and not a demon." "Foolish, really," he said sadly. Some sighed softly, and sat silently for a minute before nodding. "I understand your position, and will not begrudge you for it. Still, when you inform the boy of his parents, would you be kind enough to let me know? I would like for Hana to be here, as well," she said. Sarutobi thought about it for a moment before nodding. "Very well. I can accede to that request out of respect for the marriage arrangement, and you were there at his birth. I will explain everything at that time though, so remember to tell Hana that it is all a secret until I, or my successor, says otherwise," he said to the Inuzuka matriarch. Some nodded, and bowed before leaving the room, as the privacy seal dissipated. Time skip. 2 days, Naruto's lab. Naruto sighed, as he awoke to a, now normal, feeling. Hikari and Anko happily smother him between their oak pie while they slept. Not that he was complaining. He sighed, as he remembered his plans for the day. Anko had been insistent about him going to meet the girls. Apparently, they wanted to meet the man that could remove the curse mark, as well as steal Anko's heart. He didn't mind going, he just wanted to meet with the old man, and learn more about his parents. Still, that could be put off for another day so he could meet Anko's friends. She may have promised to be his SAG slave, but she only acted that way when she was trying to make him blush, although he had a feeling it would carry over into other activities, as well. He made a kage bunshin, and kawarimi'd with it, making the clones sport a huge grin, as it cuddled with them. Naruto's eye twitched, but he sighed, and went to make breakfast. 20 minutes later, Naruto dispelled his clone, and chuckled, as he heard grumbles from his bed. He walked in balancing 3 trays with eggs, bacon, and toast. "Morning Foxyheim, Hebeheim," he said brightly, as he set their breakfasts in front of them. He had left a plate on the table for Amaterasu, out of respect and kindness considering she helped him a lot over the past month. They began to eat in silence, but Anko turned to Naruto after a while. "So you're gonna come meet the girls?" she asked neutrally. She knew he had a problem with many people and, although she wanted him to meet her friends, would understand if he didn't want to risk it. Naruto sighed before smiling softly at his slave/soon-to-be lover. I'd be happy to meet them in Hibiheim. I just hope they aren't like the rest of the villagers, he said. Anko squealed in delight and glomped on him. Thank you? I promise you won't regret it, she said happily, as she scarfed down the rest of the food and went to get ready for their morning training session before they met her friends for lunch. Hikari smiled. You are opening up more and more every day, Naruto-kun. I hope this continues. I sorta miss your hyperactive prankster self, she said. Naruto chuckled. I have gotten brighter, haven't I? Still, the pranks aren't going away just yet, Hikari-chan. I've still got to get the old man, and probably any godparents I have, back for their neglect. He said with a foxy gleam in his eye. Hikari's eyes sparkled. I can't wait. She put her finger on her mouth and started drawing circles on the bedsheet while looking as cute as possible. I get to join in, right? She asked cutely, her head tilted to the side, and her eyes having an innocent look in them. Naruto took one look at her before his mind shut down, and all the teasing the girls had put him through caused several kinky scenarios to run through his head at her actions and slightly disheveled look. Oh, of course, Hikari-chan. He stuttered out with a blush on his face and a small nosebleed. Hikari's eyes turned downright mischievous. Does Naruto-kun have something dirty in mind for me? She asked seductively. Naruto suddenly found himself pressed against a rather well-endowed female chest, and a voice whispered hotly into his ear, only if he had something in mind for me, as well. Anko's voice carried past his ear. Naruto promptly had a huge nosebleed, and passed out twitching, as the girls flashed AV sign with their hands before taking care of the dishes while giggling. Noon, girls' meeting bar. Kurenai, Hana, and Yugao were waiting while softly gossiping about recent events. The last few days had been rather hectic, all on account of Danzo. Luckily, these girls had been able to get the day off seeing, as their specific talents weren't needed. Kurenai and Hana were pretty good trackers, but with too many following the same scent it gets hard to distinguish between the myriad of smells, so they were excluded. Yugao, although an ANBU, was a demolition sort of person, and the fighting with the root forces was already overseeing, as Danzo had fled with most of his forces. Anko smiled brightly as she walked into the bar, and turned to Naruto, who was right behind her. You may want to set up a privacy seal if you don't want anyone listening in, she commented, as she knew many of the people there would love to find out what he was capable of, if only to hurt him later with that knowledge. Naruto nodded, and reached into his pocket, quietly fingering a seal not unlike the one he had used in the Hokage's office. Kurenai noticed Anko, and quickly waved to her. She waved back, and the couple made their way to the table. Kurenai and Yugao were wondering why Naruto Uzumaki was accompanying her, but kept silent, waiting for her to explain. Hana, on the other hand, was pretty sure she knew why he was here. Sim had told her about who Naruto was, and she had every intention of honoring the agreement between their parents, if he accepted. She guessed that he was the one to remove Anko's curse seal, and to make those anti-rape seals. If that was an insight to the quality of his character, then she had no doubt he would make a good friend, not to mention husband. Anko quickly sat down at the table with the higher girls. How's it going? Even as Naruto took a seat next to her, he discreetly slipped the genjutsu/privacy seal under the table, as he slid into the booth. The girls all nodded, and said fine. Before Kurenai eyed Naruto, not to be rude, Anko-chan, but why have you brought Uzumaki-san to our meeting? She asked. Anko smiled brightly. That's simple. You guys have been asking for weeks to meet the guy who removed my curse seal, and created those anti-rape seals. Well, here he is, she said happily. The girls' jaws dropped, even Hana's. This kid had made seals that made Jiraiya's accomplishments look like crap on paper? Impossible. Still, they had seen him make some kind of seal in the middle of the council chambers 3 days ago. Hana was there with her mother, Kurenai is a jounin, and Yugao is a personal guard to the Hokage, so maybe she wasn't lying? Naruto cleared his throat. As hard as it is to believe, yes, I am a seal master. I kept my abilities hidden, for reasons that should be quite obvious to everyone here. His eyes turned a steely blue. Understand that I haven't even told the old man this, and the only reason you're privy to it is because he behind here trusts you, he said seriously. The girls were a little upset by that, but Yugao nodded first. I understand. My name is Yugao Yuzuki. She looked around and smirked. You put up a privacy seal, didn't you? She asked. He nodded with a bit of surprise on his face, and she chuckled. It's little things. The guys are googling things that aren't there, and they aren't glaring at you specifically. I don't know if this will help, but I'm Nico. she said with a soft smile. Naruto rocked back in his chair before a smile spread across his features. Good to see you again, Nikone-chan. I haven't seen you since my 5th birthday, was it? He asked. Yugao nodded. You got too good at hiding after that, you little scamp, she said with a chuckle. Naruto chuckled back. Yeah, I didn't have much choice in the matter. Noticing her face beginning to drop, he continued, still don't get sad, it all worked out in the end. Plus, I'm not here for pity. Hibiheim has been begging me to come meet you, so here I am. Besides, he said smirking at them, I heard you all enjoyed my pranks, he asked humorously. The girls all chuckled. Yep, we sure did. Name's Hana Inuzuka. You know my little runt of brother Kiba, Hana said, introducing herself happily. Naruto just eyed her for a moment before saying, you know, from Kiba's description I thought you'd be more demonic, he said. He noticed the tick mark on her head before he chuckled. He must be blind or something not to notice the obvious relation to angels, he continued. The girls all blinked before Hana's face lit up in a blush. You're just saying that, she said a little flustered, trying to get her blush under control. Is he hitting on me? She thought to herself. Meanwhile, Anko was practically smirking up a storm. You little rascal. You're putting our teasing to good use. Already getting your harem picked out? I guess I can give you some help, she thought happily. After all, Hana could act just as crazy as Anko sometimes, and that would make having her around a blast. You should know, Naruto doesn't compliment a girl unless he means it, she said coyly, as she took a sip of her sake. Hana's face had gone down, but she just shook her head until she heard Naruto chuckle. I'm guessing you've never had a man compliment you, and actually don't have ulterior motives. He was a little amused by this fact. Hana just sighed, and shook her head, before Kurenai nodded in agreement. Yes, most men are pigs. All they want is to get in our pants, she said haughtily. Anko's eyes suddenly took on a dangerous gleam and, unfortunately, Naruto didn't notice it. Hey Nai-chan. I totally forgot to tell you guys just how me and Riddle-kun got together here, she said with a smirk. The girls all leaned in a bit closer, eager to hear this story. Naruto, however, was eyeing her warily. She's up to something, he thought. Oh, can't you just believe she wants her friends to know the full story? Hikari asked in his mind, covering for her sister in crime. Naruto answered her quickly, no, and listened in. She told them about him saving her, and his treatment of her along with helping him train. When she got to the part about explaining his secrets, she looked over to him. He sighed. There's still something I wish to keep secret, but I suppose I could give you a little insight, he said, gaining their attention. I have a bloodline. That metallic form you saw in the council room? It's a defensive bloodline that basically makes me impenetrable by regular blades, and even some jutsu won't affect me, he stated, shocking the girls. That's very useful, Naruto, Yugo said, slightly astonished. The other girls just nodded their agreement. Naruto nodded back, and smiled before nodding to Anko. So, he arrives late to training, and then takes me back to his hideout, right? Well, we get down there, and he tells me all of this, and then says I can remove your curse seal. Now first, I'm all like you better not be shitting me, and he's all like I've never lied, and I'm not gonna start now. So I tell him I'll be his SAG slave if he does it. He says yes, and that's how we are today, she said happily. Naruto had only a second to realize that he'd just been played when 3 kunoichi turned to him with a fire in their eyes. You did what? Kurenai said angrily. The other 2 women advanced dangerously fast. Naruto waved his hands in the air. Wait, she didn't tell the whole story. The girls didn't seem to care, and were almost on top of him when he squeaked out, please don't hurt me. That's when Anko busted out laughing. The girls all turned to her with surprised looks on their faces. Oh man, that was priceless. I haven't been able to prank Riddle-kun like that in months, she said with tears in her eyes. Hana was the first to calm down, and she turned to Naruto. What didn't she tell us? She asked with a slight fire behind her eyes. Naruto peeked out from his fetal position and looked around. I refused at first. It wasn't until she kissed me that I nodded in a daze, he said, still fearful of the divine wrath of women. Yugao turned to Anko and said, is that true? Getting a nod from the other purple-haired woman, she sighed. Sorry, Naruto. I guess we sorta jumped the gun there, she said apologetically. Naruto chuckled nervously. It's fine, but I'm still going to get you back for that one, Anko-chan. Using divine fury is off limits. I thought we agreed on that, he said. Anko gulped. Naruto may have been using a mask to hide his skills, but his pranking abilities were still top-notch. Alright, she said nervously. Kurenai frowned. You still shouldn't have accepted her offer. It's degrading, and Anko shouldn't have to slave herself out to you simply to satisfy some ego you have. she said to Naruto. Naruto glared back. Don't you blame this on me. She offered, I refused, and then she practically forced me to agree. Besides, he looked at Anko. Any straight male, or gay female, would jump at the chance to claim her. However, I refused to acknowledge her as just a slave. If you have a problem with what she offered, too bad, because she's mine now, he said heatedly. He loved Anko, and he'd be damned if one of her friends was going to claim she was just his slave. The girls were all taken aback by this. Anko was actually blushing lightly. No one had ever claimed her so heatedly before. Not to mention his blue chakra had created a slight haze around himself, showing just how much chakra he really had. Hana was staring, and thought, loyal, and a bit possessive, but that's fine by me. Besides, everyone knows what they say about men with a lot of chakra, she thought with a mental giggle, and slightly perverted nosebleed. Kurenai was a little put off by the declaration, but narrowed her eyes at the last statement. She's yours? What makes you think she didn't get to finish her statement, as Anko was glaring at her? Kurenai, you're my best friend, but if you keep pissing Naruto-kun off, then we are going to have serious trouble. I'm the one who offered, and I have yet to regret it. He's a perfect gentleman, not to mention fun, as hell to tease. If you can't accept it, then we will have to stop being friends, she said seriously. Kurenai may be her best friend, but Naruto had done more in the past 2 years than anyone had in a long time. She had no intention of giving that up, and she knew that he would never hurt her, at least not consciously. Besides, he knew what it was like to be alone, and she didn't want to have to feel that again, or let him feel it again, even if he had Hikari. The girls all seemed shocked at that statement. Anko had never told one of her friends that someone else was more important than their friendship. It just didn't happen. Kurenai looked at her. Why, you're kidding? You're just gonna let him treat you like a slave? She asked incredulously. Anko nodded her head. I promised him I would, and I kept my promises just like him. Besides, he's never treated me that way, and if he ever did, he'd have quite a few people raining righteous fury upon him, she said giggling, as she thought of Hikari, Ayam, Tuchi, Irika, and Amaterasu. Ayam and Tuchi had been informed of his abilities and his secrets after the Little Council debacle. Needless to say, Ayam had very nearly gone apeshit at the prospect of her being a slave, but it had all worked out in the end with a few death threats. Naruto shook his head. Geez, you make it sound like I'm some horndog just looking for more pussy, Kurenai-san. I'd appreciate it if you thought before speaking, and took into account just what I've done, and what I have invented, not to mention you don't even know me, he said, slightly chiding the woman for jumping to conclusions. Kurenai hung her head, and took his advice while thinking about what she knew. She was about to speak again when Naruto sighed. Look, I didn't come here to turn this into a philosophical debate, or some fight over an agreement. I was hoping to get to know you better because you're all important to Anko-chan. Let's forget about the joke, and the argument, and just spend some time talking, okay? He asked. The girls looked to one another before nodding. Deal, they said happily before launching into learning about one another. Hana actually didn't like flowers. Kurenai had a thing for shiny knickknacks. Hell, Yugao liked to sunbathe in the nude. Needless to say, she threatened Naruto about letting that secret out, and he happily complied, lest he lose something important to his future family, namely his ability to create said family. It was soon 1:30, and the girls all had things to do. Anko had an interrogation, Yugao had the late night shift for the Hokage guard, and Kurenai needed to meet her team since she had used the morning for her friends. The three girls all got up and left, leaving Naruto and Hana, although Anko yelled back, Inuzuka is said to be wild in bed, Naruto-kun. Just leave some for me later, causing the two people to go bright red from the implications. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. So, what are you doing this afternoon? He asked, genuinely curious. Hana chuckled, as her blush faded. Well, I need to do a checkup on the Inuzuka kennels, and I was planning on leaving soon. If you want to join me, I could use a hand wearing out the more friendly dogs, she said. Naruto thought for a moment before smiling. Sure, I don't have anything else to do, and playing with the doggies sounds like fun, he said a little childlike. What? He's still 12, Hana chuckled again, and shook her head. Yes, the doggies would love to meet someone who can outrun A and BU, she said humorously. So he's still a bit childlike, but that's okay. He's serious when he needs to be. I wonder how he will be with the dogs, she thought, as she led her, probable, fiancé to the kennels. Inuzuka kennels, 1:45 p.m. Hana arrived at the kennels only to find her mom just arriving with the needed materials to ensure regular checkups, and the special materials used to check the pregnant dogs. Some noticed Hana come in with Naruto. She raised an eyebrow, but smiled, and said, "Hello, Mizum. I was beginning to think you had forgotten your job." Hana blushed slightly at the jibe. "Sorry about that. Anko-chan brought Naruto-kun to Girls' Day because of certain reasons, and we sorta lost track of time," she replied a little abashed. Naruto looked around the area, and noticed that they were in a stable-like house with cages instead of stalls, although most of the cages were open so the various people could interact. He could notice a large open pen in the back where he heard a lot of yipping, he assumed from the puppies. He quickly ran through a few seals, and the kennel glowed a slight blue. Hana and Tsum looked at him curiously. "Hello, Tsum-san, it is a pleasure to meet you." He smirked. "It seemed that you enjoyed my little show with Danzo," he said. Tsum barked out a laugh. "That's right. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Too bad we couldn't catch the bastard," she said, gaining a nod from Hana and Naruto. She eyed him for a moment before saying, "Say, could you explain what you did to those roots blades? And that seal was interesting too." She noticed his wary look, and she raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I ain't fishing for any bad reason, but it is rather interesting that you have never shown these abilities before." She smirked. "Besides, Hana brought you home so you're either a stray or a potential mate," she said teasingly. Hana and Naruto both blushed, but didn't look at one another. Hana stomped her feet and yelled out "MOM" indignantly. Suddenly a gruff voice chuckled from the back. "Quit teasing the pups, Tsum. But I would also like to know about your abilities, Naruto-san," Kuramaru said, stepping out from checking on his mate. Naruto stared at Kuramaru for a few minutes before Kuramaru's eyebrow began to twitch. Naruto smiled. "Sure, but I get to scratch your ears while I talk," he said happily, not in the slightest bit deterred by the warning looks given to him by Tsum and Hana. Kuramaru raised his one eyebrow and growled lightly. "Why's that pup?" he asked, genuinely curious and slightly peeved at such a childish request. Naruto chuckled. "Because it looks like you could use a good stress reliever. Besides, I've heard tales of how rough you're supposed to be, and I want to see if they're true," he said with a hint of a challenge in his voice. He never had the chance to really pet a dog before, and he wanted to. Besides, his secrets wouldn't be secrets much longer. No sense in hiding them from someone who had never hurt him. All was silent. Hana and Tsum wanted to face bomb, but resisted because they knew Kuramaru was going to attack the boy stupid enough to request something so childish. They did not expect him to chuckle and say, "Very well, pup. But your hand moves somewhere it's not supposed to be, and you'll be missing it." He turned to the stunned Inuzukas, as Naruto walked next to him, and sat down. "I like this pup already. And if this gets out, I'll chew your tits off, clan laws be damned," he said, as he put his head in Naruto's lap, and enjoyed the petting. Tsum and Hana just stood dumbstruck until Hana had one thought. "Well, at least I know he's good with that." Meanwhile, Tsum thought, if he can get Kuramaru to trust him, he'll fit in very well here. Even as they sat down and began to look to Naruto for an explanation, Naruto sighed. "I did promise, and your clan has never hurt me, but I must ask that you not speak of this until the Hokage announces it. I will be speaking with him probably tomorrow, so it really shouldn't be an issue," he said. They all looked at one another, Kuramaru included, and nodded in assent. "Good. The thing with the blades, well, simply put, it's my bloodline," he said, shocking the girls and the dog, as they all knew of his heritage. Although, they couldn't let him know that yet. "Be bloodline? How?" Tsum asked, stunned. Naruto shrugged. "Guess I got it from my parents or something. Anyways, it's like an ultimate defense. At the basic level, it will deter just about any blade. Advanced levels will give me protection from even special blades, although it won't stop them completely, and even against some jutsus. You will understand that I won't go into more info than that right now," he said, trying to maintain some knowledge of his bloodline from open eyes. He didn't point out the weaknesses for that very reason. Hana and Tsum both nodded. After all, clan secrets were the same way. "Good. As for the seal, I found that, by focusing enough chakra into my finger, I could make seals midair by using my chakra as a medium," he said. He looked at Tsum. "Did she know?" he asked. She nodded, and he sighed. "I think it's got something to do with Kyuubi really, but I have no way to be sure. I've heard that other Jinchuriki gain special traits from their bijus, so I guess this is mine," he finished explaining. The women were silent until they heard a thumping sound. They looked around until they noticed that Naruto had apparently hit a very sensitive spot, and Kuramaru's leg was twitching. They proceeded to laugh their heads off, much to Kuramaru's dismay. As they stopped laughing, Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes. "I know that was funny and all, but don't you have work to do?" he asked, pointing to the dogs. Hana blushed slightly. "Right, sorry. Well, I won't tell anyone, just talk to the Hokage soon, huh? She said. Naruto nodded, and some voiced her agreement before heading out, taking the pleased Kuramaru with her. That kid knew just what spots to hit, and he may have to visit him sometime. Hana decided to get started, and went to the puppies first. Since they were the most energetic, Naruto spent a lot of time distracting the puppies, as Hana did her various checkups. She would often stop and smile at Naruto, seeing him quite happy, and the puppies were talking to him very well. Needless to say, this was only adding points in her book. The bigger dogs took a shorter time, but they really wore Naruto out, and it was getting close to dinner time. Hana noticed this, and offered for him to join them, but he declined, saying that he was just tired, and wanted to head home for the night. He appreciated the offer, and she thanked him for his help, before he quickly made his way to his apartment. The martial law had been lifted earlier that day, so he was good for now. He planned on getting lots of sleep. Tomorrow was going to be an important day. Next day, Hokage's office, 8 a.m. Sarutobi sighed in contentment, as he looked at the scroll in front of him. It contained everything that Naruto would receive from his parents. It wasn't much, just the keys to their estate, and the bank accounts. But that was because Minato and Kushina had died without leaving anything, both assuming Kushina would live. Of course, he didn't know that Minato already left Naruto all of his seals, but that's beside the point. He didn't know when Naruto would talk to him again. He still seemed rather annoyed with him after the council meeting 3 days ago. It seemed he wouldn't have to worry about that, as his door suddenly opened, and Naruto walked in with Anko right behind him. He leveled a stare at his Aji-san, although this meeting would determine if he still held that title. Aji-san, we were interrupted the other day, and I won't wait another day. I want to know who my parents were, he said seriously. Anko was standing behind Naruto, as he took a seat, but remained quiet. She knew this meeting was going to be important and serious. Sarutobi smiled. No need to wait, Naruto-kun. I just have to call someone in for this discussion, and I will tell you everything I know, he said happily. Naruto was a little taken aback at Sarutobi's quick agreement. You're not going to argue with me about some secret or something? He asked, surprised. Sarutobi's smile dropped a bit. I have made many mistakes throughout my life, Naruto. Only recently have I realized just how badly I screwed up trying to protect you. You are obviously at least Chunin level, and I believe you deserve this after everything you have been through, he said sadly. He snapped his fingers, and Nico appeared next to him. Please get me some Inuzuka, and Hana Inuzuka. Tell them it involves Naruto Uzumaki, he said. The ANBU quickly bowed, and sunshine away. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Why did you ask them here? He asked. They didn't mention what I told them yesterday, did they? He thought sadly. I doubt that, Naruto-kun. Inuzukas are like dogs, fiercely loyal and honest. Maybe they have some sort of connection to your parents, Hikari theorized. Oh, you will learn why in a moment. I would like to keep this information secret for now. Just know that they have an agreement with your parents, he said, dodging the question, as he did want to keep this a secret. Naruto nodded and sat silently. Sarutobi looked at Anko and back at Naruto before leaning forward and saying, if I may, what exactly is your relationship to one another? He asked them. Naruto craned his neck to look straight up, and Anko looked at him. Naruto sighed. Since you're explaining everything, I will too. Just hold off on that question for now, he said. Sarutobi nodded and leaned back in his chair. He could wait. Luckily, he didn't have to ask Hana, and some sunshine into the room, along with Nico. Sandaime smiled. Ah, good you're here. Nico, please inform my secretary that I will be in an important meeting, and to not be disturbed unless someone is attacking the city. Also, please do not return to the room, and stand guard outside, he said. Nico nodded and bowed. Sarutobi looked at Naruto, who sat there for a moment before chuckling, and handing a tag to Anko. She shook her head, and muttered, lazy, under her breath before slapping the tag on the door. Sum and Hana both took a seat, with Anko opting to lean against the wall near Naruto. Now that that's over with, I believe the first order of business is to tell you who your parents were, Sarutobi said. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot hot-blooded habanero, and the Red Death of Konoha. Your father was Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure, and Kiroi Senko. They were both S-class shinobi with flea on-site orders. IWA and Kumo fear them greatly, and they would seek any retribution to strike at their children. That is why I withheld your heritage. At the time, Konoha was too weak to fight them off, so the announcement of a Jinchuriki was a political maneuver. Aside from that, your father wanted you to be seen as a hero, not the beast. Obviously, that didn't work out, Sarutobi explained. He decided to pause and let that sink in for Naruto. Surprisingly, Naruto rolled his eyes. I knew about Yusan already. I'm more interested in my Ka-san. Is she still alive? Is she dead? Aside from that, do I have any godparents? Still, I do appreciate the extra information, he said. Sarutobi looked at Naruto in surprise and said, How did you know about Minato? That was one of the best kept secrets in Konoha. Naruto chuckled. Where do you think I got the materials for sealing? He apparently sealed all of his sealing knowledge into my arm. The first book came to me on my 6th birthday. The rest were set to come out, as I unlocked it by advancing in seal levels or all of them at age 18. If I died, it was set to use some chakra that saturates the body after death, and summon the materials somewhere, probably his house, but I'm not 100% sure until I see where the ending seal is. Naruto explained. As far as figuring it out, he left 2 notes in the seal, and the information for Rasengan and Harem no Jutsu. Not hard to figure it out when only one person ever used them prominently, Naruto said. Everyone's jaw dropped. And Naruto, you know the Harem no Jutsu? Hana asked. Naruto shook his head. Not yet, give me a month or so, and probably. Although it will probably take longer than that to master it because my resistance seal isn't high enough. Tsunade had his at 8, but he recommends 9 for optimal usage and strain on the body. I'm currently at 7, the lowest level to actually use it, but I'm still having trouble properly sensing the kunai, he replied. But enough of that, we are getting off topic. My earlier questions please, Naruto said, staring at Sarutobi. Some spoke up, your Ka-san is presumed dead. The maternity ward was destroyed in the Kyuubi attack, and she was in it when it collapsed. Although, we never found her body so she is officially listed as MIA, she explained. Naruto nodded, and Sarutobi sighed, and prepared himself for a verbal backlash. As to your godparents, yes you do. Tsunade Senju, and Jiraiya of Sannin. Tsunade believes you to be dead with Kushina, and leaves Konoha 2 hours after the attack finishes. She never stuck around because she believes Konoha has taken everything from her. Jiraiya, I lied to him, and he just hasn't been in Konoha long or often enough to run into you. Even if he did, he wouldn't recognize you, Sarutobi said sadly. He could see the fire burning in Naruto's eyes, and decided to answer his unasked question. The seal you asked about, the one on your jumpsuit? It confused people into thinking you couldn't be related to Yondaime. The seal was a deterrent to keep people from guessing your heritage. I am truly sorry, Naruto, he said, hanging his head in shame. Hana, Tsum, and Anko all glared at the old man, but they quickly turned their gazes to Naruto. He was personally waging an internal battle of whether to kill the old man, or just maim him. Hikari was respectfully quiet because this was a personal problem, and she would not offer advice unless he asked for it. Naruto closed his eyes, and took a deep breath before leveling a glare at Sarutobi. Is that all, Hokage-san? He asked. Sarutobi visibly flinched, but said, Not all. It seems that Kushina, through Tsunade, wished for a marriage contract between you and Miss Hana here. It simply states that you two are to be wed at your 16th birthday unless the both of you, bearing outside influences, wish to annul it. I may not have much rapport with you, Naruto, but he looked into the young man's eyes. I would hope you at least give Hana a shot. Sim was an old friend of your mother's, and I'm sure they would both love to see you together, he said. Naruto closed his eyes and took another breath. He shook his head, as he thought, damn you old man. I'll get you for this. Naruto slowly stood up and brought his hands together. Everyone cocked their heads until, in a puff of smoke, Naruto was gone, and Naruto was standing there mostly naked, much to Sarutobi's horror, as he passed out from blood loss. You just did that to get back at him so you can forgive him, huh? Hikari thought, chuckling at his prank. He mentally nodded, and dropped his jutsu to face the now annoyed women. He chuckled nervously. Look, I know it isn't very gentlemanly to knock him out like that, but I had to get him back for the shit he's put me through. I usually only use that as a gag against perverts. He looked at Hana, and sighed before a smile went across his lips. Well, Hana-chan, I hope to get to know you better. I will warn you, however, I'm not the one you have to impress, he said, smirking. Hana looked confused, and said, I would like to know you better, as well. But what do you mean by that? Naruto chuckled. Just wait till the old man comes back around. After I'm done, Hikari-chan will test you, he said as he sat back down. Tsum and Hana shared a look while Anko had a gleam in her eye. Oh joy, I get another harem sister to tease. Hana is a good friend, and will probably be a good lover for Narukoi, Anko thought happily. Meanwhile, Hikari was thinking, Hee. And Inuzuka. Perfect. Loyal. And she's probably going to love anal so Naruto can enjoy whatever he likes. Now all I need to do is get Emi-chan in here, and we could have some real fun. Sarutobi came back, and groaned slightly. Glad to see you up, Aji-san. Since you came clean with me, I'll come clean with you. First, he walked the still recovering Hokage, and kneed him in the crotch. That's for making me have this damn forgiving complex. Don't you know if you tell a kid for years to forgive that it's nearly impossible to be angry if someone asks forgiveness? The Oryoku no Jutsu was for everything else, so I'll let that slide, Naruto said. Despite the pain in his balls, Sarutobi smiled, as he realized he was forgiven, and sat in his chair, tenderly. Okay, don't interrupt me, he said, getting nods from the uninformed people in the room. Now, I met Kyuubi on my 10th birthday. Shi, yes, she is very nice actually. She even offered me a bloodline. Naruto went on to explain everything, even his bloodline's weaknesses, and the 3 levels that protected him. You will find out what they do later. His seal's master status, although not officially recognized, his discovery of Oro Team's lab, as well as his training. Needless to say, they were shocked. Sarutobi rubbed his temples, so Hikari was controlled? Are you sure? He stopped his sentence, as he noticed Naruto's, and surprisingly Anko's, glare. Right. Well, I have your inheritance here. So you will be a clan. After your lineage, and declaration of your bloodline, you will probably be forced into the CRA. Is that acceptable to you? He asked. Naruto chuckled, and Hikari appeared next to him. Sounds good to me. Besides, Anko-chan's already slated to be with us. I say the more the merrier. Everyone stared at her for a moment before she disappeared, and reappeared with Hana standing near the back of the room. She proceeded to do much the same thing she did to Anko years before, getting a nosebleed from the Inuzuka, and a nod, before saying, Welp, she's okay with me, Narukoi. Just get to know her better, K's. Naruto nodded, and Hikari happily plopped herself down in his lap, and started to purr, as he petted her tails. Sarutobi sighed again. Hikari, I presume? He said, getting a nod from the demoness. Well, I just want to say, thank you for helping Naruto. I appreciate it, he said. Now, Naruto, this scroll has your family's bank accounts, and your house keys. Please enjoy it, and I will probably call you for a meeting sometime tomorrow or the next day, and a council meeting next week for the instruction of the Namake's clan, okay? He said, getting a nod from the blonde-haired boy. He chuckled seeing the excitement in his eyes, and he handed the scroll over. It's right next to the Inuzuka's compound actually. Now get out of here, and enjoy the compound, Naruto-kun, he said with a smile. Naruto beamed, and said thanks John na Aji-san, as they all disappeared in a mass shunshin. Sarutobi chuckled before noticing the paperwork piling outside his door, and nearly crying. He suddenly noticed a piece of paper on Naruto's chair, and read it. Dear Aji-san, use Kage Bunshin for paperwork, you old coot. Signed, Naruto Namikaze. He proceeded to bang his head on the desk until he made 3 KBs, and they got to work. He sighed, as he pulled out Ika. It was a good day for the Hokage. Next day, a loud boom was heard, and people all looked to the main gate of Konoha to see a happy sight that they would soon learn to dread. Gamabunta was Tsunade, and Jiraiya on his head. The Sannin had returned home. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.